Joining us now, Curtis Ellis from America First Policies, my good friend, a senior advisor there. But Curtis has been around the block, so to speak, not to age him, but Curtis was on the transition team. He was an executive with the U.S. Department of Labor. He was on the Trump campaign. He was president of the American Jobs Alliance. And he's all kinds of titles because the guy's been around the block a few times, as we say, and he's with us now, a senior policy advisor with America First Policies. Curtis, great to have you.
It is great to be here, John.
Now, Curtis, the G20, we haven't really talked since the G20 meeting, and the president coming back and saying that, well, you know, looks like we have a deal with China and there's some good things going on. We have a good relationship. We're talking about how we might solve some of these trade issues. You know, we don't really want to put the tariffs on if we don't have to. And so then Larry Kudlow gets on TV and we get a lot of happy talk, and Kudlow saying, yeah, we got a deal, and the Chinese are, you know, there's going to be no tariffs, and they're going to buy soybeans, and they're going to buy corn, and they're going to buy, I don't know what they're going to buy, Clorox or something. They're going to buy stuff. But then we dig a little bit deeper, and it's a lot of happy talk, and we dig a little bit deeper into what Kudlow said, and I couldn't find a single actual commitment the Chinese made. And then you look at the Chinese media, and they were like, yeah, we stalled them again. And then there was the scuffle between 60 days or 90 days. Here's the problem, okay? Larry Kudlow is a great guy, but Larry Kudlow is an open borders, open trader, trying to survive in an environment where this president actually believes in protecting American jobs, and they don't. Therefore, you have a conflict here. But my question to you is, Curtis, what have the Chinese actually agreed to?
They have, at this point, they've actually agreed to talk. That's what they've actually agreed to. And they had a phone call this morning and another one last night to set out the timetable for talking. They have made noises, and it's not in, haven't seen anything in writing. They have made noises that they will increase purchases of American grain and maybe natural gas. I'm not sure about the natural gas, but they're going to increase their purchases of American agricultural products. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say they agreed to that. So far, they've agreed to talk, which we've been doing with the Chinese for 25 years, get a lot of talk, no action. And they've agreed to buy our farm products. So if that's all they agree to, we are now in the position of 1775, when Great Britain ruled the world, was the high-tech manufacturer of the world, and agreed to let the colonies talk about whatever they wanted. They couldn't vote on it. They didn't really, nothing ever came unless King George wanted it to be. And the colonies would sell Great Britain farm products, tobacco, wood, things like that. And Great Britain would make all of the finished products, would manufacture everything. And our comparative advantage would be in making, growing things and cutting down trees and sending the trees to Great Britain to be made into furniture and wood and things like that. So that's what they've agreed to so far.
So they've agreed to buy a natural. They've agreed to buy farm products, the things that we grow.
They've agreed to buy farm products. We have soybeans that they stopped buying when, in a petulant rage, reacted to President Trump saying, the game is up, we know what you're doing, and we're putting tariffs on your products. They reacted by saying, we haven't done anything wrong, and we'll show you. We'll stop buying stuff from your farmers, because then your farmers will vote you out of office. So they basically imposed economic sanctions on the Farm Belt and hoping to influence the outcome of our elections. And now they say, well, okay, now we'll buy the farm products. Now that the midterms are over and that next elections are 2 years away, we're going to buy farm products, and we want, clearly, we want the senators from the farm-producing states to now tell you everything's okay and please leave China alone. That's China's strategy at this point.
So basically, they've agreed to buy nothing. They've agreed to do nothing. They've agreed to purchase nothing. They have no contracts on the table. And they've gotten what they thought was a 90-day, but now a 60-day reprieve on the tariffs. But here's what the president has done. Unlike when Obama signed remember when Obama signed the climate accords and he went to China and the Chinese said, yeah, I tell you what, we'll investigate the possibility of stop building a coal plant a month in 2030. But until then, we're going to build it. But after that, yeah, we're going to talk about it.
That's right.
He said, I have this deal with China. And so we're going to go forward. And meantime, they're now building 2 coal plants a month.
Right. And Obama also signed an agreement with China that China wouldn't engage in cyber espionage. They wouldn't hack into our computer systems and steal everything they could lay their digitized hands on. And we see how that worked out. Which gets us to the other thing China has said it agreed to. It hasn't really agreed to it because, again, to me, an agreement is something signed, a piece of paper that's got deliverables. You know, this is going to happen at this point, and that's going to happen at that point, and then you sign a piece of paper, everybody agrees to it. Nothing like that's happened. But China says it's willing to discuss our American complaints about the theft of intellectual property. See, China, and here's something your readers, your listeners may not be aware of because it's very rarely reported in most of the media, including, most of the media. China is a communist country, right? The government is communist. Newsflash here, folks. And what does communism mean? It means you've got American professors on American universities preaching it and brainwashing our children to think it's wonderful. But one of the essential ingredients of communism is that there's no such thing as private property, right? Once there's no private property is theft. That's the way the communists think about it. So it's okay for them to take anything that you have, take your house, give it to somebody else, because there's no private property. It's all for the good of the people, right, supposedly. Well, if there's no private property, what does intellectual property mean? Why do I own the patent, or why do I own the rights to produce something I came up with? Why can't anybody do it? Well, that's the deal. The Chinese don't believe in private property. They don't believe in intellectual property because they are communists. So we have a problem with that. Well, now the Chinese say they're willing to discuss it. The Wall Street Journal today reporting that an advisor to China's Supreme People's Court said China is speeding up approving a revised patent law to address U.S. concerns about intellectual property protections. Well, there you go. The Chinese are going to pass a law, folks, and we should be really excited about that. Wow. And if we have a problem with the Chinese enforcement of the law, which, of course, would never happen, we can take it to the court in China. Doesn't that make you feel good, John?
It's unbelievable that the message coming out of some of the president's so-called advisors, this happy talk, is just such nonsense because they have agreed to nothing. They are doing nothing. As you said, stealing our intellectual property for the Chinese, Curtis, is like a rite of passage. I mean, that's what they do. Now they're going to pass some bogus law.
Well, it's like MS-13. You got to go out and murder somebody to get initiated into the gang. Yeah, in China, you got to steal somebody's intellectual property if you want to really do business in China.
This is incredible. I mean, and just to come out of this G20 meeting and have Steve Mnuchin, Goldman Sachs Golden Boy, and Larry Kudlow, and I know I'm criticizing administration officials, the Secretary of Treasury. I don't care Because, look, I've been fighting this battle for my entire adult life, okay? They're free traders. They don't believe in any of the things that the president is trying to do, so it's very difficult for them, and I understand that. But to go around and say that, there's this great progress that's been made, the Chinese haven't committed to dog crap, basically. They've committed to nothing. And the bottom line is they've got 60 days. But here's what the president did. He didn't take the tariffs off, right? He kept whatever he's got on, he kept on. We still got the 25% tariff on steel, 10% on aluminum. By the way, steel industry exploding. I already gave those numbers earlier. He's kept those on. And then the debate became over 60 days or 90 days where Cutler was trying to say, they've got 90 days starting in like February. Well, that's like 35% of the president's second half of his first term. And that's not true. It's like, what?
Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. I don't mean to get upset, but it just drives you nuts. And it's like they sit there and they think we're stupid. See, that's what bothers me. Like, oh, yeah, it's all happy. We have this deal and they're going to buy all this stuff. This was no different than it was about, 9 months ago, where Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said, I met with the Chinese. We don't need any tariffs. I made a deal. They're going to buy something. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And the president said, I don't think so. We're not doing that because at the end of the day, they're not going to buy crap. They're not going to buy anything. I mean, first of all, they talk about buying soybean. Do you know that they own a bunch of soybean farms in, where is it, South America?
Brazil. They own the entire soybean production chain in Brazil. They own the farms. They own the land. They own the company that sells the soybean seeds and the chemicals, fertilizer, pesticides you need to grow soybeans. They own the railroad that transports the harvested soybeans to the port. They own the port. They own the ships. And they own the trading company that buys and sells the soybeans. And then they ship the soybeans back to China, where they're ground up, turned into soybean oil, turned into soy sauce, turned into tofu. So, they don't really need our soybeans. They're doing this purely as a negotiating ploy, hoping that we're going to be suckered into thinking, great, now we've got all the soybean farmers happy, all 12 of them in Iowa, right? I mean, on one hand, we're told, the free traders tell us, we're a service economy now. We don't need manufacturing. The same way we went from being an agricultural economy to an industrial economy, now we're moving from an industrial economy to a post-industrial service economy. And there's only 1% of the population is involved in agriculture. 1% of the population works in agriculture. Isn't that interesting? Now, you would think the sky is falling because the agricultural sector, the soybean farmers, are being hurt by China. Oh, we can't have this. Do you realize what it's doing to our soybean farmers? You mean all 12 of them? You just told me how nobody works in agriculture anymore. They haven't for 100 years, and nobody's ever going to work in manufacturing because we're all in the service economy. What services are you talking about? Oh, that's right, financial services. Oh, I see. What you're saying is you and all your friends work on Wall Street, and those are the only people that matter anymore. I get it. Thank you.
That's exactly it. And, Curtis, can you just explain to me, remember when we had this whole free trade thing with China? We opened it up, and remember all of the free traders and open border types telling us, this is really the key to making China a free, open democracy where there'll be voting and there'll be capitalism, and it's the key. And if,
that's right. Yeah, exactly right.
What
John,
happened there?
You've hit the nail on the head.
What happened?
Ayn Rand used to say, check your premises. Check your premises. That was one of her great sayings. It's there in Atlas Shrugged. It shows up in her essays, and I think it's a really good point. Check your premises. Let's see where we're at here. The premise of opening to China was that it would be war by another means. Instead of using bombers and navies and armies to defeat communism in China, we would do it by sending them our jobs and our factories and our capital and building factories over there. They'd all become rich, and once they were rich, they would all become Democrats, right? They would, or Republicans, or libertarians, or they'd all vote, and they would all be free, and they'd be an ally. That was the premise. They said it. It would make China more prosperous, and as it became more prosperous, they'd become more like us. Well, we now see that was wrong. Our premises were wrong, totally disproven. The Communist Party is more powerful than ever. We're becoming more like them. Google is now, ready to build a censored search engine. They want to deploy it here. They're throwing people off the internet left and right. It's becoming the Chinese model for the internet is becoming the model for America, right? So the premises were wrong. They have not become more free. They're not becoming more free. So why the hell are we doing business with these people anyway? If the original reason for going in was wrong, well, I guess we should pull out now. That's when you get down to brass tacks. So they've got to find another reason for doing business with China, because the original one was BS. So, and I suspect all along the original one was BS. They knew that. They didn't care about that. They saw an opportunity to make a lot of money. Make a lot of money, move our factories to China, pay people 10 cents a day, produce the goods that used to have to pay Americans $35 an hour plus benefits. We'd, get somebody to do it for 10 cents a day. And then we'd sell the stuff back in the United States. In short term, we'll make a lot of money. And by the time the whole system falls apart, we'll be dead. Our kids will have trust funds, and who cares?
Curtis Ellis, that last 30 seconds is one of the most brilliant, insightful things you've said. Because they knew this would never work. They knew this was not about democracy and everything else. But they knew that in the short term, they were going to make a tremendous amount of money if they invested in the right places. And we got cheap labor, and that's why they were in favor of this. It was a scam in selling the whole thing. And you know what it reminds me of? Remember it was, and I don't know, this just popped in my head. Remember Paul Wolfowitz? What was he? He was in the Reagan or Bush administration. I think Bush. Right. Yeah, and then he went to the World Bank. Yeah, it was. That's right, World Bank. And it was Paul Wolfowitz who defended the second Iraq invasion, which I have, as you know, I'm not a fan of that. Yeah. But he defended it, and he said, look, you know what? It's going to let freedom ring. They're going to be a democracy. We're going to get their oil. It's going to pay for itself. Actually, when it's said and done, we will liberate them and turn a profit. Remember that? Yeah. He never believed that. There was not a single person in that administration that believed any of that nonsense. But it got sold to the American people as a way for them to meet their military expansion agenda, to sell things, make more money, and somehow Iraq was going to be a free democracy and we were going to own the oil. Nonsense. Anybody with two eyes and a brain in their head could tell you it was nonsense. No one believed it. Well, I tell you what, there is no agreement with the Chinese. They have agreed to absolutely nothing. But the president has not taken any of the tariffs off, and the president said, you got 60 days to figure this out. So it's 60 days of reckoning. And then after that, remember, he tweeted out and he called himself Tariff Man. Yeah, and we've got the best negotiator heading the team. That was clarified. Bob Lighthizer, U.S. Trade Representative. He's the General Patton of the trade world. This guy is tough. He negotiated with the Japanese in the 80s. And those are some other tough customers. He didn't take any nonsense from them, and he knows how to do this, and thank goodness he's in charge of the negotiations, not Steve Mnuchin or someone else. And nothing against Steve Mnuchin. He's a perfectly brilliant guy, made a fortune on Wall Street. That's great. But Bob Lighthizer is a seasoned trade negotiator. That's a specialty. I wouldn't go to a foot doctor to have my brain operated on. You go to a trade negotiator to negotiate trade. All right, I got to roll. John Fredericks Radio Network. I want to thank Curtis Ellis for being with us.